Being a single mom and doing it all by yourself is brutal. Learn the brain and energy tools to get back to your center and overcome your challenges. Welcome to Single and Doing It All, the podcast to help single moms co-parent with the universe and avoiding the spiraling down in all these crazy negative energies and emotions, which is really, really needed right now. Today, I have a guest that her expertise is very timely, let's say, because she's a specialized in herbalist, and I'm going to let you know more about her. And I brought her especially for us to know how to make our immune system and our body stronger in these crazy times. If you're listening to the podcast later, we are in the midst of the pandemic with COVID-19, and we need everything we can get to stay healthy and vibrating high. So my guest today is Rosalee de la Forêt, RH. She's passionate about inspiring you to enjoy plants every single day, whether it's marveling their beauty or using their gifts as food and medicine. She's the best-selling author of the book Alchemy of Herbs and co-author of the brand new book Wild Remedies, How to Forage Healing Food and Craft Your Own Herbal Medicine. Rosalee is the Education Director for LearningHerbs and registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild. In addition to writing books, Rosalee teaches online courses and herbs. Oh, she's teaching online courses about herbs, including Taste of Herbs, Herbal Cold Care, and Apothecary. She lives in a log cabin in the northeastern Cascades of Washington State with her husband. And she's an avid gardener and excels at cuddling up with her cat and a good book. Welcome, Rosalee. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Muriel.
I'm very excited about having you because this is a subject that, first of all, is very dear to my heart because my mom always had books about herbs and natural remedies growing up. And I love herbs. I use a few of them. I'm learning more with your material. And especially, I have a course. And I think it's really, really, really needed right now in the world. I know that you personally healed with herbs and natural remedies. So I would love if you could let our audience know about your story so it could inspire them to do the same, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, so it's about 20 years ago now. I had just graduated from college, and I was actually on my way to France to teach there. And I got waylaid and started going to a wilderness school. And while I was at that wilderness school, I got really sick. And I was in bed sick, which is really weird symptoms. I thought it was a flu at first. I had aches all over my body, and I had a fever that happened just at night. I'd get a 104 fever at night and then wake up the next day and it'd be gone. But it happened every day for a month. And I was finally admitted to the hospital, and they did so many tests. And weeks later, they came back and they said, "Oh, you have a very rare autoimmune disease, and there's nothing we can do for it. There's no cure. And you will have they're very matter of fact about it. They were kind, but matter of fact, so they probably need to be in their job. And they said, you will have a declining quality of life. You will probably die by the time you're 40. And we can use steroids to manage symptoms until then, but they will increasingly not work. And here's a brochure." And it's a very rare disease. It's called Still's disease. And so it's a very rare disease. They really didn't know much about it. And so for days after that diagnosis, obviously, it was a very hard time. I was just kind of in the pits of despair, just wondering all those things that I think we go through during those times, and wondering why me, and, just couldn't believe that this was going to be the story of my life. And it really took about 3 days of that before I just completely snapped out of it. And I just thought, there has to be other answers out there. Like this, this one team, it was the whole team of specialists, at this hospital in Seattle. I said, there has to be more than that. And so I just went on this journey of trying to figure out who could tell me more. And I went to see naturopaths, acupuncturists, herbalists. I had this great team of people helping me out in all these different ways. I drank a lot of really gross herbal concoctions. They are Chinese medicine and they are not known for tasting good, but I'm just so grateful to them, and all the people that worked with me. And I radically changed my diet. At the time, I was eating what I thought was a very healthy diet. It was filled with wheat and soy and
Oh, yeah.
just very like problematic things. And anyway, so 6 months after doing all of these things, I didn't have any symptoms. And I kept, I would have relapses, I'd feel better, and then I'd not feel better. But after 6 months, all of that stopped, and I haven't had symptoms since. And so I was already interested in plants. I was already interested in nature connection, but I was kind of interested in a way that I felt like, I don't know, like it was a hobby, like,
Yeah.
oh, if you get a boo-boo or something, like if you have these little problems, then maybe you could go to these cute herbal remedies and they would help you. And that experience just transformed my life, because I had this very serious disease that Western medicine had no answers for. And all the practitioners I saw, they never said, there's nothing we can do for you. They didn't say I can cure you, but they just wanted to know who I was and how they could support my process and journey of well-being. And it just transformed me. And I knew from that moment on that I wanted to be an herbalist and help people as well. I knew there must be so many people out there who are just kind of told there's nothing we can do for this chronic disease, but there's so much that we can do.
But there is, and I think it's the journey we are slowly starting to shift toward is natural medicine, because there are many people with many illnesses that Western medicine doesn't have help with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important. Where did you start though? So when you realized that you wanted to try herbs, did you right away go to school to learn about it, or did you
Mm-hmm.
start with the herbs you had at home?
Mm-hmm.
What was the first stage?
Well, I've gone to many different schools. In that first school that I was at, the wilderness school, one of the instructors there was an ethnobotanist. And so I spent 3 years studying with her, which was just amazing, learning the plants that grow around me. Before that, I didn't really know any plants that grew around me. And after that 3-year apprenticeship, I knew most of the plants that grew around me. And it was such a fun way too to learn, because it wasn't just learning their names, but learning their cycles and spending time with them, learning about how to use them as medicine or food, or how to make baskets out of them, just learning them on just so many different levels. So I did that. So I was really getting to know the plants themselves. And then after that, I went to a school in California, the East West School of Herbology, and I did their 4-year program. And then I did a mentorship program with my mentor, Carter Pudik Singh Khalsa. I spent years studying with him. And once I started to get into clinical herbalism, he was just so great, because I started seeing people and I'd bring my case studies to him and we would go over them together. And so I did that for years, him kind of like shadowing over my practice. And then I was in practice for many years as well.
You really went serious about it.
Yeah, I kind of have an obsessive personality. That is
Yeah,
definitely
I'm
one of
like
my
that too.
things. So
I'm pretty extreme. When I like something, I dive fully into it.
yeah.
So did you find that, because you said you learned the plants around you, did
Mm-hmm.
you find that in every place you live or in every country, they have different plants that would do the same thing, but it's just because you find them locally, that's the one you use?
I would say yes and no. Like one thing that immediately comes to mind is that, well, I'll say, I first learned the plants around me and I used to learn them and love them. And
Yeah.
they're still my favorite. And then I studied at East West School of Herbology. That's mainly a Chinese medicine school. And then my mentor was mainly Ayurvedic, although there's,
Wow.
things on all of those. So I have that, some sort of background in those studies and using those different herbs. There's a different quality, to like ordering an herb online that I've never seen in life, and then, using it or recommending it, than to plants that I have, like that I know them so well because I spend
Yeah.
time with them in my garden or out in the forest. So I definitely prefer the ones that I know well. But in Chinese medicine and in Ayurveda, they have a lot more tonic and building herbs. that we don't necessarily have. So sometimes they're called adaptogen herbs. And these are herbs that we use to kind of build us up from the inside, give us inner resilience and strength. So these are, some of them are famous, like ginseng,
Yeah.
ashwagandha,
Mhm.
astragalus. We don't really have those as much here in North America, whether we don't know about them, you know, or we just, or they just don't exist. I don't know. But so even though I use a lot of Western herbs, I still use those tonic herbs a lot because they're not, we just don't have the equivalents here.
That's funny because I use them, I know about them, but I never actually researched to see where they were coming from. I just buy them and use them.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's
they are being
interesting.
grown here more and more. But you know, that's definitely, they didn't start out here. So
Wow.
yeah.
Do you think that, I live in Las Vegas, for example, and it's kind of hard to grow stuff here. I mean, it's not impossible, but we have to be very careful with the sun in summer and all that. For someone who doesn't have the possibility maybe to grow her full herbal garden, there is still value in purchasing things online, or should we put an extra effort in growing them ourselves?
I think there's just value in both, because, like, let's say astragalus, that we can talk more about astragalus in a moment, but that's one of my very favorite herbs, and I use it all the time. This year I've used it especially a lot, because it's such an immune tonic and building herb. And so I don't even know, maybe I've gone through 6 pounds of it between my husband and I. If I were to grow that, I would need to have like an astragalus farm, you know, rows and rows of it. And you harvested it after 2 years. So I'd have to have successive. I mean, it would just be impossible.
Yeah.
And so I do grow astragalus in my garden, but I don't really harvest it. You know, I just spend time with it and I get to see it. So I like having the plants around me, but in that case, you know, I order them. Muriel and I were talking, I actually have family roots in Las Vegas, and I remember visiting my aunt, and we'd walk around her garden, and she had citrus trees. She had such amazing citrus trees in Las Vegas, and that's an amazing medicine. And you know, I think, by which point, obviously not everyone lives in Las Vegas, but I think there's a lot of unexpected medicine out there, no matter, you know, what climate you live in. And even though, you know, some herbs might get more glorified than the others, there is something to be said about looking to see what's out there for you. Pomegranates are another really wonderful medicine. So, and those two don't really get talked a lot about as medicine, but they definitely shine in the medicinal world.
Yeah, I know a lot about lemon, but I never, until now, it became kind of trendy to buy pomegranate juice. But I never thought about it before, like the last, I don't know, 3 years or 5 years that it has been on the market. So you mentioned astragalus, which is one of your favorite one. Could you give us like maybe 2 or 3 of your favorites and why they are their favorites? So you can start maybe with astragalus or.
Yeah. Just favorites in general, or specific with immune building, or?
Yes, their properties maybe too.
Okay. Yeah, so I do love astragalus. It originally comes from China. Like I mentioned, it's being grown more and more here. It's a root that we use. It's in the family. It's in the pea family, but we use the root, and it has a very sweet taste. And this is wonderful medicine because it's very nourishing and gentle, but it has, when you take it over time, daily in larger amounts, you feel that building and tonifying action. And it's used for a lot of reasons, but often used for the prevention of illness. And so, like, if somebody comes to me and they say, oh, I'm just, you know, I'm getting a cold or the flu several times every year, or, you know, I just get everything that comes around, and I'm just constantly getting upper respiratory infections, that's a good sign that astragalus might be good for them. Also, if they feel tired, you know, if they don't have a lot of energy, then astragalus can be a wonderful one. So that's kind of 2 things that I look for, is that kind of worn down, tired, and catching a lot of illness. And it was traditionally cooked into food. You'd slice up the roots and pound them up and then cook them into like soups and rice, and just taken all the time, every day. Like, this is something that gets taken a lot. So if someone's just kind of generally interested in it, then that's a good way to use it.
Wow.
If your family isn't that into herbs, they won't even notice that's in there, because it has such a bland taste, and you can just pick it out. You don't ever eat the root. It's kind of fibrous, but you just, when you put it in big enough chunks in your rice or whatever, you can just easily remove it. And then it's just, is infused into your food. So that was how it was commonly used. These days, I like to make a decoction out of it, by which I mean that I'm simmering the root with other spices and then straining that off. And right now I'm drinking that practically every day. So it's like about 30 grams of astragalus root, which if it's chopped up really finely, that's about a quarter cup. And then I add things like ginger and cinnamon and cloves, and simmer that on the stove for a while, strain that off. It's so delicious. And it's just a fun way to enjoy all those benefits, a yummy way.
Yeah.
Easy to go down. So yeah, that's one of my very favorites. And I typically use it from, probably end of September, and then usually through March. And this
Okay.
year with the coronavirus, I have no idea if it'll be a preventive factor for the coronavirus, but it makes sense right now to be building
Yeah.
up our immune system and
Anything.
just,
Yeah.
doing whatever strengthening we can. So I'm drinking that every single day.
So that's like a cure that you do almost every year, like a seasonal use of the herb.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
used to get the flu every year. I used to get colds all the time. And I really attribute it to when I started drinking astragalus a lot, that those went away. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's really
I
potent.
just crave it in the wintertime, because it's this warm, spicy,
Yes.
yummy beverage. So it's not something I really crave in like July and August, when it's hot out.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
And so that's astragalus. What's the second one that you use or love the most?
Um, well, I guess like another one that really comes to mind right now is chamomile. And chamomile, I used to just like brush aside chamomile
Yeah.
for the longest time, because it was like I had that little cookware that was like the story of Peter Rabbit, like the mug and it's like this vintage stuff. And I had that as a kid. And so I always knew about chamomile, but I just thought it was like a cute thing, like here's your cup of chamomile tea, Peter Rabbit. But
Me too, until I saw your class, until I
yeah.
took your
Yeah.
class.
Yeah. So it's easy to just think, oh yeah, everyone knows chamomile. It's just this little thing, but chamomile is so profoundly amazing. And it just does, like, it's one of those herbs that just does everything. The issue, I think, the reason why so many of us kind of brush it aside and think of it as like, we think of it as gentle and therefore weak, is because we don't often prepare it in the best way. So most of us buy it as a tea bag.
Yeah.
And so we buy the tea bag and we dunk it in the water for like 2 minutes, and then we drink it. And admittedly, that tastes really nice. It kind of has a sweetness to it. It's aromatic. It's generally pleasing. 2-year-olds will drink it.
Yeah.
So it's a good tasting tea. And there's no problem with drinking it like that. It's a fine way to drink it. But when we use a lot more chamomile and we steep it for a much longer period of time, it then becomes not as pleasant tasting, admittedly. It has a much bitter taste to it. So there is that, but it becomes this like just profoundly relaxing medicine, which I think a lot of us could use right now. I mean, it's very calming.
Yes.
We often say that chamomile is like getting a hug from a loved one. And
Oh.
the genus of chamomile is Matricaria, which is delineated from mother. And so it's like
Oh.
chamomile is very associated with mothers. And I think of it as like chamomile is like a mama bear. It's like they can be so gentle, with their cubs, but if need be, they can be ferocious.
Yes.
So that's chamomile. And so there's not like any one way to make a chamomile tea, but you can make it increasingly stronger depending on the situation. And so using it for, again, dunking a couple of tea bags and having an enjoyable tea after dinner is great, but you can, increase the amount, increase the steeping time, and make it stronger and stronger. This will be varying for different people. And so other things you can use it for is, again, that kind of deeply relaxing way. It can help promote sleep at night, but I recommend drinking the tea like an hour before bedtime. Because drinking tea right before bed is not always the best
Yeah.
situation, but about an hour before bedtime, drinking that. It is my favorite thing for fevers when somebody feels like they are restless, listless, and in a lot of pain, or they have a headache, chamomile is amazing for that. And you make a strong tea. It doesn't stop the fever process. It supports this beneficial fever process, but even though it's, widely understood now that fevers are beneficial, they can be
Yes.
really painful and
Yes.
upsetting. So that, the headache, the aches, the pain, just the restlessness, and chamomile can just take that all away. It can help you rest, which is really important. And it can really ease those aches and pains, relieve the headache associated. And, the biggest thing with a fever is always you want to stay hydrated. And so it can help
Yeah.
with that as well. Um, Another thing I really love with chamomile is to make a strong chamomile soup, like in a bowl. So getting like a good sized bowl and putting like a half cup of chamomile in there. Then you pour just boiled water over it, stir it in, and then put your face over the bowl. And then you put a towel over your head
Oh,
and you make this steam, like a steam tent out of the chamomile soup. And what
okay.
happens is those like aromatic oils come up with the steam. You're breathing deep, and you can help, by then you're like getting all those wonderful essential oils that modulate inflammation and get things moving into your sinuses, into your lungs. And so if you have sinus congestion or if you have lung congestion, that's a really great way to get things going. This also is like a beauty treatment. So that's
Yeah,
nice.
we used to do that in France too, and I do that now only when we have cold, to stand above some steam and
Mm-hmm.
open the pores and clean
Mm-hmm.
the face really well. I remember as
Mm-hmm.
a teenager doing that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually, I recommend that a lot, specifically for teenagers who are dealing with skin issues, because
Yeah,
it's just a great way, like you said, opens up the pores. And so I really love this because it's cheap, it's easy,
yeah.
it's, a beauty treatment, and can help, deal with lung congestion or sinus congestion. So
Yeah,
um,
I do that. I never thought about doing that with chamomile because I do that for my kids. I have essential oil and I do that with eucalyptus and lavender. I never thought about chamomile. I'll try next time.
yeah, yeah, chamomile. We really like. There's like, I just wonder. There's so little that chamomile can't do. It's just,
Yeah.
it strongly modulates inflammation. It relaxes the nervous system. You can use it for so many things for colds and flu. I mean, it works so nice on a sore throat. You can infuse the flowers into honey. I love that. Take the
Oh,
fresh flowers, infuse them into honey, and make a chamomile honey. It's absolutely delicious and
that
calming.
sounds good.
It makes a really amazing bath too. And so what I do for a chamomile bath is I order the bulk chamomile. So I have like lots of it. And I'll take like 2 whole cups of chamomile and make a really strong tea out of it. And then I strain off that tea and add that tea water to the bathtub.
Ah,
And then that becomes this, incredibly
relaxing.
relaxing bath. I mean, that's just like, that is a relaxing bath. I don't plan anything after that kind of bath. That's like a
Yeah.
go to bed directly after that. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm relying a lot on chamomile these days. I've been doing the steam every time I go to town. Then I come home, I do the steam, and drinking a lot of chamomile baths. And it's definitely something I'm relying on a lot right now.
And that's an herb that is so taken for granted.
It is, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. An herb that I wanted to ask you about, because I know that garlic is very potent.
Mm,
I put it in honey. You were talking about honey,
mm-hmm.
and I grew up with Mediterranean cuisine, so we use a lot of garlic. I planted the garlic a few days ago
Oh, cool.
to see what would come out. Are there any properties to the herb that come out of garlic if I ever decide to do something with it?
Yeah, so the scapes that come out are they're really I have my good friends are garlic farmers. They live up the road,
Oh,
and so I get a lot of the scapes from them, and it definitely has that like spicy taste. I've never used them as medicine per se, but I definitely use them all the time in food. But because of that spicy taste, I'm sure it has, very similar qualities. I love to make pesto with it.
oh, I'll
um,
try that.
and
Mhm.
yeah, it can be like the big part of the pesto, and so that's a really delicious way to enjoy those. But they're really great grilled. Barbecue them up and grill them, or saute them. But yeah, they're very delicious. I love that like fresh taste that comes with them too.
Yeah. So garlic is, I think, is in everybody's kitchen,
Hmm.
and it has a lot of properties. Does it have any? Does it help with the boosting your immune system, or
It
Is it?
does. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. Another one that I've been relying on a lot right now. So yeah, it does. There's numerous studies showing how it boosts the immune system, and it's kind of fascinating to see all the different particular ways that it does. But they've done studies on kids showing kids taking the aged garlic extract regularly had fewer incidences of colds and the flu. And then they've done studies where they particularly see like that garlic increases NK killer cells, and so we have lots of evidence that it does. I have so many friends who just swear by it, like, oh, I take a
Yeah.
garlic clove every day and it keeps me healthy. So I love that when like we can look at science and see what science has to say about it, but we also have so many people using it and just knowing
Yes.
it, because they see it in their own lives. The thing about garlic, a couple of things, is that when we use it for colds and the flu, that it's probably best fresh versus dried or cooked. There are a lot of studies with the aged garlic extract, and so that
Oh.
there seems some benefit there. But for me personally, I love just to use it fresh,
Yeah.
and so and then even when you cook it, it decreases some of its benefits specifically for the immune system, but it still has a lot of benefits in terms of digestion, and heart also has many heart benefits. So it's not that cooked garlic is bad. It's just that if you're thinking like, oh, I want to use this for its antimicrobial properties, then you're going to want to use it fresh. And the thing about garlic, though, when you have it fresh, it can be kind of upsetting to the stomach. Like there's only so much you can have before it makes you nauseous. And there's a couple of ways to offset that. What I've been doing is we often have veggies and eggs for breakfast. And I'll mince up the garlic raw and like put that after everything's been cooked. And so and so I just put it on top. And so I eat it with the food. Basically, if you eat garlic raw on an empty stomach, you
Oh
will
yeah.
greatly enhance the chances
Yes.
of it being problematic. But if you mix it with other foods, mix it with butter or oil, it's going to help offset that nausea a lot. So, and
Okay.
another trick with garlic is that you mince it up and you let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes and then you use it. And
Oh.
what's happening in that time is this chemical process that's actually making it more potent. So um, that's another kind of trick with it. But
Oh,
yeah.
that's funny because I know, like I was saying, my mom growing up was into some natural remedies, and I one thing that stuck in my mind was that, for example, oranges, when you cut an orange or a fruit, the vitamin C is going away after like 15 minutes. I never realized that it could be the opposite and that it could become
Mm,
more potent if you leave
hmm.
it for a certain period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
No, that's
interesting.
true on both accounts. Vitamin C is just so easily just breaks down so easily. So it is true.
Yes.
It's like as soon as you pick something that has normally high in vitamin C, that vitamin C quickly degrades. But
Yeah.
yeah, in this case, the garlic becomes more potent. Yeah.
That's funny. I know that garlic, back in time, I caught a plantar wart in a pool, and I put garlic overnight for, I don't know, maybe a week or 10 days as a paste, like I crushed it, and it took it away completely.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
it's very, very strong.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. And that's great for the feet. Sometimes, garlic can be so strong that it'll burn skin. So you have to
Yes,
be careful where you put it
yes,
because it'll
yes,
be pretty intense. Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
And so based on what I've learned with your class, your course online, by the way, for the audience, Rosalee has a course on Hay House. If you want to check it out, it's really fun to do and it's very informative, and she will give you recipes for all kinds of herbs. I learned that you can prepare herbs or teas. I don't know if it's really called a tea when you do an not an elixir, but oh my God, the word escapes me, but there are 3 or 4 ways to work with herbs.
Mhm.
Um, could you let the audience know, because a lot of people don't even know that you can prepare it differently?
Mhm. Yeah, so there's we have our water-based extractions, which is basically teas, and we kind of talked about that. We can make a tea with a tea bag and steep it for a short amount
Yeah.
of time, or we can use more herbs and steep it for a much longer amount of time, and those really are dramatically different preparations. I mean, that's a fun experiment to do at home, is just try, different steeping times. You can really feel a profound difference. Then you can also, we talked about with astragalus, with roots and barks and seeds, we often decoct something, which means we simmer it in water versus just infusing it in hot water. And for those harder things like roots and barks, it's really necessary to simmer it to get the good stuff out. Then we can just drink it like that, or we can preserve it in some way. So syrups are made basically by decocting something and concentrating that liquid and then adding an equal amount of honey or sugar to that mixture. And that's basically a syrup. And then that's preserved and you can enjoy that for as long as it stays good. Then there's alcohol extractions, which are commonly called tinctures. And
That's a
basically
word.
you're using the alcohol
I
to
couldn't
extract
remember.
the plants. And then with that, those are typically taken in smaller dosages. There's glyceride extractions, which are kind of made similar to alcohol, but they don't contain alcohol. It's a sweet substance, but made very much the same. Or vinegar. You can use vinegar to extract
Oh,
things. And vinegar is really great at extracting vitamins and minerals, especially minerals. And so if you use an alcohol to extract a plant, you aren't getting the vitamins and minerals so much as the vinegar. So I make a lot of vinegar extractions, and then I mainly use them in, I either put them in small amounts in drinks or use them as salad dressing.
I've
Um,
seen. Yeah, is that the fire of the fire?
Fire cider. Yeah, fire cider
I
is like that.
have
Yeah.
to try this one because this one
Yeah.
seems not only delicious but apparently very potent too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll explain fire cider. So with fire cider, you take these very potent, spicy herbs, horseradish, ginger, garlic, onion, and you mince those all up, put them into a jar, oftentimes using some kind of pepper too, jalapeno, habanero, whatever you want. And then oftentimes other ingredients as well. Sometimes people add citrus or elderberries or turmeric, but that's kind of the base recipe. And then to that jar that has all those spices in it, you add vinegar and honey, and you let that sit. So you cover that with a non-metal lid because the metal lid will corrode. So you cover it with a glass or plastic lid, let that sit for a couple weeks and strain it off. And yeah, that's a kick.
I have to try that one.
Yeah, it's a one people take that, like every day kind of as a preventive. It definitely is one of those, like, a lot of people take it as a shot, and it's like, and you're definitely like,
Yeah.
whoa, a little just
I don't know if I would do it
invigorate
as a
you.
shot or maybe in a salad. For me, it would
Yeah,
be at the
absolutely.
beginning at least
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it seems very strong.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be. You can make it in varying amounts of strongness, like by playing with the ingredients a bit.
Yeah.
So I have a couple, like I have one that's more mild, and then I have one that's really like,
Um, so another thing I wanted to ask is, I know we call it herb, and in my head, I didn't know that they were considered herbs. Roots are herbs too. Is
yeah.
that
In
how?
in the herbalist world, we just call everything herbs,
Yeah,
whether it's like
I was
barks
surprised.
or, yeah, like, the chefs will sometimes, disagree with me or whatever, and they'll say, like, actually, that's not an herb. It's like, well, that might be technically correct, but in terms of the herbal world, everything's an herb. We even call mushrooms herbs.
Oh,
And so, yeah, they just all get blanketed under herb, because in that sense, we're not really talking about like the technical definition of an herb, which is something that, um, you know, dies back. That's like kind of the technical. It's like a plant that dies back in the winter months or whatever. We're really talking about medicine. And so herbal
yeah,
medicine is this, big umbrella for all of
yeah.
these things, whether it's leaves, barks, roots, or even mushrooms.
Is there, before we go into my question about self-love, because I always ask my guests about self-love, uh, is there an herb that you think almost everybody, we talked about garlic, but something else that we have in our kitchen and we take for granted, and that could be doing miracles in boosting our immune system or
Mhm.
protecting us?
Yeah, I had two jump into my mind. One is ginger. That's another herb that I think gets often taken for granted, and an herb that does so many things. We can add it to our meals for delicious flavor, but also really helps strengthen digestion. And also, that's one herb that I really want to have on hand if I have a cold or flu. A tea from that fresh
Yeah.
root is just so nice for the throat. It helps if you have a fever and you feel chilled and you just can't, get warm. Ginger is a really great herb for that too, because it helps just helps support that fever process and helps your body to warm up. So yeah, lots of wonderful things with ginger. Works great topically too. I'll infuse ginger into oil and then use that for sore muscles. So there's so
Oh,
many things that ginger can do for us. So I like
I
ginger
guess
a lot.
because I personally am cold all the time. So I guess
Mm,
ginger tea would help my body to feel warmer on a
absolutely.
day-to-day
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah. Ginger is a
Okay.
wonderful one for that. Yeah. Yeah, so ginger definitely gets underrated. It's just a really amazing plant. And then the other one, just in terms of like common herbs that we have, are peppermint is another wonderful one.
Oh,
And
okay.
peppermint, I love peppermint because it's generally pleasing. It has a good
Yeah.
taste. People like it, but it can really settle the stomach, and I think that goes a lot, for saying that, and just even that like ritual of having a peppermint tea after
Ah,
dinner.
that's why.
It's just, very calming. Um, I'll use that in the aromatic steam that we talked about before. A tea of chamomile and peppermint, that's a good tea there
Oh,
too. So I think that one is one that it's one that if you like start to rely on it frequently, you can just fall in love with it deeper and deeper because it just has so many benefits to it. And again, one that's often brushed aside is like, oh yeah, peppermint, it tastes good.
yeah. I have
It
oil,
really
but
does so much.
yeah. So is there any I almost did Franglish. Is it not recommended? Is there any case where it's not recommended to mix herbs into a tea, or you can mix anything anytime?
Yeah, there's not like there's nothing dangerous about it. Once you start to study herbs more, you get a better sense of it. Like one way I often describe this is like many people are familiar with coffee, right?
Yeah.
And we know that like you could put cream in coffee or you could put sugar in coffee, but you wouldn't really put like ketchup in coffee. Like that's not really
Yes.
what we do. And so it's not dangerous to put ketchup
Unless
in
you're really,
coffee,
really adventurous.
really adventurous. Yeah. So it's not like it's dangerous. It's just like there's some like that doesn't really go together.
Yeah.
And so it can be the same way with herbs that, there's just some that just maybe don't really go together. Sometimes it's, we talked about like we make teas, and generally we make teas with leaves and flowers, and then we make decoctions or we simmer herbs with roots and barks. So it's not that you can't do it, but combining those two, like leaves with roots and barks, it takes some finesse because one
Yeah.
requires a decoction and one doesn't. So
Yeah.
there can just, when you mix different plant parts together, it's again, not that it can't be done, but it takes some finessing.
It's like a food recipe. It tastes better when you're more subtle about what you put into your like the
Absolutely. Yeah.
ingredients.
Yeah.
So the question that now I ask everyone is about self-love, because I find that my clients and my students, when I tell them to love themselves, they don't even know where to start. And sometimes they don't even have a concept or a definition for themselves. So I love to ask my guests to come with their own definition to add to the broad subject of self-love.
Hmm.
What is your own definition of self-love?
That was a fun thing to think about. And the first thing, like, I don't have a well thought out description, but the first thing that really hit me was that in recent years, self love has been about self acceptance for me. And for so many years, I wanted to love the parts of myself that I loved. And I wanted to hide away the parts of myself that I didn't like. Or, I was on this like self help journey where I wanted to like just change those parts,
Yeah.
dramatically. And now I feel like one of the best gifts I can give myself is accepting me for who I am. And the way that plays out in my life is that I allow space for me to be my entire self, and I allow myself to just notice things. And very practically speaking, I'm someone that just my personality, like we've kind of talked about, like I can be pretty obsessive and I just go all in on something, and I can burn out a lot, because I'll just kind of like I'll be able to just go, from 0 to 60 and maintain that for a while, but then I'll burn out. And I used to have a lot
Yes.
of judgment about burning out. And then I used to want to change that, and now I'm at this space where I'm just accepting it. It's like, that's how I work and I do great work, and I'm accepting that's a part of me. And so now when I burn out, I just allow myself to burn out, and I take what I call vacation days. And those
Yes.
are the days, those, instead of calling it burnout or something else that's kind of negative, I just say, oh, looks like I need a vacation day. And I just use those days to rest and recuperate without judgment on myself and just accepting this is how I am.
That's very deep because in the self-help milieu, there is that notion that you always need to progress and you always need to conquer and and it's never ending. And like you said, you can feel pretty bad about the areas where, let's say, there is a part of yourself that you don't really like. You may never like it, but you can love it and accept it as is and love yourself even if you don't even if you don't like all the aspects of it. Just learn to accept them. So that's very deep, actually. And the burnout, I'm like you, but so now because for me burnout is so strong, like it's almost gonna put you on the ground and you're gonna have to almost be in the hospital. So I don't like that concept either. And now I see it coming before, so I don't push as much as I used to push. But I give myself permission to give myself a day where I just rest, because like I do good work on the other days, so it balances itself out. It's beautifully explained. I love that you said that. Are there any self-love practices that you do on a daily basis?
One of my favorite practices, besides taking time to drink tea, which in
Yes,
itself
I'm sure.
is a nice one, but another one of my favorites is herbal oils. And I love to infuse herbs into oils, aromatic herbs, or I'll add essential oils to them. Often, herbs that I've grown myself or come from friends, infuse them into oils, like really nice oils like jojoba or almond oil, and create these luxurious products out of them. And then I use those as every night before I go to bed. I, massage these oils into my skin, and I love it because just on so many levels, it makes my skin soft. It makes my sheets smell nice. But it's also just this moment before bed where I get to, rub these beautiful oils into my skin. And I think of them as kind of these like anointing oils,
It sounds so
priceless
rich.
in a way.
It's like the image that came to my mind was like Cleopatra,
Oh yeah, no, I was totally thinking about Cleopatra when I was saying that. Absolutely,
so I call it that.
yeah. That's kind of that's exactly what I'm thinking of. Just like I'm queen.
Wow, it
Here I
sounds
am.
so fun.
Yeah.
Before we go, where can people get in contact with you or check what you're doing? And I'll put it in the description too, but
yeah, the best place is on my website, herbswithrosalee.com. And there I have lots of recipes, herbal articles, all sorts of stuff. So, and when people sign up on my newsletter, they get to do a course that's finding out what the best herb for them is.
okay, I am on your newsletter, but I didn't have time to look at that yet, so I'm gonna have to do that too. Before we go, I know that now we are in the midst of coronavirus. Is there an herbs that we didn't talk about that would be one of your go-to for the immune system, or did we cover all the herbs that you would recommend for the immune system?
Well, definitely astragalus. Another thing that I'd highly recommend is looking at vitamin D and, figuring out what your vitamin D status is. There's online tests you can order. I think it's too much to go into the whole vitamin D thing, but I think there's tons of information out there about vitamin D. I would definitely look into that. And then the other big thing I'm recommending right now for anybody, if people can, is get outside.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are sheltering at home. Or we're out on the front lines and we're not at home, but there's just so much profound joy and relaxation and just those simple things, feeling the sun on our face, the wind in our hair, noticing the small creatures that are going buzzing around. I live a bit north in Washington, and spring is erupting here, and that just getting outside every day has been the most beneficial wellness thing for me right now, because it takes me out of my head, gets me off the news cycle.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes I don't realize like how anxious I am inside until I go outside and just let it all go. And it is such a profound relief.
And that's what happened to me this week when I started gardening again. I realized how tensed I was because I suddenly let go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent advice.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being our guest today.
It's been my
Uh,
pleasure. Thanks for
we've
having
learned
me.
some very nice information, and if people want to go deeper, they can go and check your website and your books. Um, so thank you again, and I hope you stay healthy and vibrant throughout
Thanks,
this
Serena.
period. Thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
being
you.
with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
For our audience, go and check Rosalee's material. She's a lot of fun in her classes too. It's very light and easy. And until I see you again, stay vibrating high, because that too will have an effect on your immune system. So try to be more aware of your thoughts and go to the ones that are bringing you joy. I send you much love and see you next time. Mwah. Being a single mom can be challenging, but you don't have to face it alone. Join our community at facebook.com/groups/single and doing it all, and receive tools, tips, and free group coaching. And if you like this podcast, please review and rate us on iTunes. I would really appreciate it.